Jeff VanVoorhis, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Peter.
So Mead and Hunt, they're a really nice looking EPC that focuses in waste to energy and decarbonization. Tell everybody what that means.
Now, first, let's focus on maybe the EPC, right? So that's a unique service offering that we can provide here at Me and Hunt is a 12-person engineering and construction company. So our goal is to build what we design. So we will put the plans together. We will procure the equipment. That's the P. And then we will be the general contractor and construct the project. So we can take complete ownership of the projects when we do that. And we can ensure the performance of the projects. We'll wrap that actually into our contract and provide performance guarantees when we are the EPC. So that provides the owner with a lot of de-risking, sole source accountability, and it's a true partnership for these projects. So that is really sets the base of our business model is being the EPC on these projects.
And no, that's huge. And we see that as investment bankers a lot. The EPC contract comes in so big, it looms large over getting financing for these deals. Are you guys typically working with smaller developers, bigger Fortune 500s, or maybe a mix?
Yeah, it's definitely a mix these days, especially in the waste energy market. It can be utilities, that have public and private sector sides of the utility. It could be developers, big and small. It can be actually equipment vendors that are basically trying to sell their equipment. They're basically financing the project to sell their equipment. And it can be utility or public entities, such as a municipal utility, like a water or wastewater treatment facility for city XYZ. They could actually be our client and then look at, third party, a P3 public-private partnership to help promote the financing of these projects. So lots of different avenues that we entertain clients. And it's a pretty well-rounded, I think, mix of those in our portfolio right now.
No, I can imagine. And are typically the clients going out for third party financing or financing off balance sheet, or could be either one?
I think it really varies. I think timing is a lot of that and how much funding as far as like tax credits and other funding is required for these jobs. So we'll have the same client look at the same, two different projects, basically two different ways because of maybe the timing of where they are at in their budget for the year or where they're at in trying to progress to a goal for the year that they want to move faster. So they know they maybe don't have time to bring in another third party. Or it's just based on their rate of return that, they've got a milestone that they're trying to meet. And if it's not that, then they have to look at alternative sources. So once again, it's a really good blend probably across our portfolio.
Gotcha. And how long have you guys been at it so far?
Well, I used to not have gray hair. So
Oh man,
I think I've been at it for a while.
I feel your pain.
So, our company's been doing this design, build, EPC, alternative project delivery since the late 90s. So, we've started obviously on a smaller scale and obviously the project scale has increased, but we've really developed a process. That's the key is having a process in place to execute projects. And we just continue to grow not only our team, but also the project scale.
Yeah, I can imagine that process is everything. Nick Saban, right? Trust the process.
Gotcha.
And people throw that word around, but man, it's hard to develop something that really works. But once you got it, it's so valuable. How do you see in terms of your clients benefiting from that kind of a process within your organization?
Yeah, I think it's getting down to, resources, right? Not having, if you look at large corporations, even utilities, right? They used to have a lot more personnel in, say, their engineering and projects groups. And, it's a sign of the times is staffing reduction, across the board. So most of our clients used to probably do all these projects on their own and be their own project manager, do design, go find contractors, buy the equipment themselves. And due to limited resources and staffing reductions, they don't have that ability to execute anymore. So they really are leveraging firms like us that have the knowledge on engineering and construction, have that process in place. And, we've done it before, right? So we're not developing it on their project. We're showing them how we've done it, 50 times previously successfully. and showing them our process, bringing them in as a partner, and then using our team, our resources, our staff to execute their projects.
Sure, that makes sense. With the IRA passing, and I heard you say decarbonization, have you
Yeah.
seen activity accelerate, or do you think that legislation made a difference in terms of the amount of deal flow that you guys are getting?
Yeah, I mean, the IRA was really an extension of the investment tax credit, the ITC before that, and just expanded the project types that were eligible for that funding. So I'd say it definitely really opened up a volume of projects with the IRA specific to what we're doing in biogas. So we probably at least doubled in volume for what we had been doing previously with the investment tax credit. Now that we're dealing with the IRA does have some deadlines coming up here soon at the end of 2024. So, we are being asked to show schedules on how we're going to meet these deadlines to ensure our clients are going to get that tax credit funding for those projects, because at 30 to 40 and even 50% funding, I mean, that's a substantial change in the financial performance. As you may know, when you're looking at these as an investment banker, the performance of these projects. So schedule right now this year is everything in regards to the IRA.
Yeah, the IRA was huge for sure. Of course, with biogas, we're seeing it in other areas like battery storage, even hydrogen a little bit, although hydrogen's been tough. I don't know what you guys are seeing as far as other areas, but maybe walk me through not a biogas project, because I know we've talked on this show a lot about it and I
Yeah.
think people are familiar with it, but a decarbonization
Sure.
project and what a project might look like practically for a developer.
Yeah. And what we're really doing is working with a lot of large corporations that have already, gone public, right, with some sort of carbon reduction or even full decarb goals. And they've got some dates and some key milestones in place, but they may not know how much it's going to cost or how long it's actually going to take to get to those milestones, right? So what we're doing is really developing the roadmap. And that roadmap obviously consists of a schedule and a cost to show them what they need to spend when to meet those goals. And it's really getting in and understanding where the low hanging fruit is so we can get some bang for their buck on the initial projects, show success, right? Show improvement, and then tackle maybe the harder, maybe the more costly items that would be farther down the road. So right now we're really focusing on the low hanging fruit in regards to decarb. Is that, renewable energy? Is it electrification of those facilities? There's lots of different ways to get some immediate results. And what we've done successfully is show that we can actually execute those projects. So we're going beyond planning, right? And actually showing, okay, here's the execution methods, here's the execution schedules needed for these projects. And a lot of these facilities, are operating, right? So how are we making that transfer, that conversion, the retrofit, as I call it, while they need to stay operational and successfully operational? So that's some of the biggest challenges out there right now is, hey, we need to make a change, but how do we do that while you successfully maintain and operate your facility right now?
Yeah, man, it's so hard to make changes while you're operating. Wouldn't it be great if you could just shut down or
Yeah.
build a new one? I mean, we see a ton of greenfield stuff, but really to get financed, it actually a lot of times is easier if there's an existing operation because starting from nothing, as you know, is difficult. When you say low hanging fruit, could you give us a couple examples maybe of stuff that you guys have seen that's been effective?
Yeah, I think the electrification comment I made before for decarb is definitely some of the low hanging fruit. So if they're, let's just say, they're trying to generate heat at a facility, so they're using conventional natural gas fired boilers, for example, right? So how do we make the switch and actually look at electrification to provide that heat? So that now we're looking at maybe a CHP unit or something that's completely different, or bring in renewable energy and capturing heat off of that to replace the conventional natural gas fueled boilers, right? So once again, that would be, a transfer of operations, of assets, of equipment, of those in operation of those facilities on the fly, or have some transfer plan to accommodate construction and tie-ins of that work. So that's a lot of what we're looking at is like, hey, if you look at your carbon scores right now, where are they at? Let's look at some of those more conventional changeovers and show those costs and develop a short-term plan for those.
Gotcha. Boy, so when you say boilers, you're talking about usually I think big industrial facilities, serious operations. Does that tend to be what it is?
Yeah, definitely it is. And, the other technologies that come into play with that are heat pumps, right? So a lot of history, specifically around the world, maybe less in the US on large scale heat pumps, which can recover that heat without the need for putting in, new heat generation facilities. And, we're spending a lot of time talking to, our counterparts in the UK, for example, looking at what's successfully maybe being done across the pond just because of their utility rates, are astronomical, orders of magnitude compared to what we have the benefits here in the US. So leveraging what they've had to do just out of cost concerns of operations over the past 10 years, leveraging that technology and bringing it over here as part of our decarb goal. And, it's just slightly different use of the same technology is really what we're trying to do.
Yeah, no, heat pumps are definitely an exciting technology, and we are seeing it a lot in the residential applications. But I
Sure.
hadn't heard of it being used in industrial applications, so that's pretty exciting. I don't want to put you on the spot, but who's an OEM in large scale heat pumps that that you would say is advanced or is doing well?
Well, I'm not going to take that bait because I'm not going to advertise for somebody because we have our challenges and benefits with every vendor out there right now. So right now, they're all in some form of good or not so good graces with us, depending upon the project.
I hear you, and I don't blame you, but I had to try. So, but no, I'm glad to hear you point that out because I think that gives the audience some concrete actions of things that they can take in terms of decarbonization. And I've heard great stories around heat pumps in commercial, industrial, or residential applications. So that's really great. Maybe look forward a little bit. We talk about what you're doing now. Wayne Gretzky, they says skate where the puck is going. As you guys look ahead, maybe 5 years, do you see more of the same, this decarbonization trend continue? Or what is maybe a new area that people haven't necessarily thought of that might be exciting over the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, I mean, decarb is going to be our growing market for sure. So, 2030 is a pretty significant milestone for a lot of companies with their decarb goals, but then 2050 is really the end game on decarb for most companies out there, right? So, especially if you're trying to get the complete decarb, carbon neutral, zero net carb, their 2050 is usually a big date that a lot of companies have identified. So, we're going to have a lot of gray hair at 2050 here. So that's the long game that we're playing, right? So that'll be the more difficult projects. They'll probably take longer to develop. There may be new technologies by then that we can start looking at and testing. And that's one thing as an EPC that I think sets us apart from our competition. So we've actually been hired by lots of companies with unique goals. And they say, hey, find us something different to look at, besides some of the things I just mentioned. And there are some technologies out there, and we've been successful at actually getting pilot scales on site at our clients to actually try these, kick the tires, as I like to tell people, before you buy a car, that's what I did with my dad, right? Go kick the tires. Well, we're doing the same with our clients, right? We're bringing in technologies on a small scale, putting it at their facilities and running it for several months to see, what the impact is. Does it, operate successfully? How much work does it need? Is this, not a fit at this time? Maybe it's further down the road. And we've been doing quite a bit of that as an EPC because, now we got to figure out how to integrate this pilot skid into an operating facility. So that's a whole project, engineering project on its own to actually get the pilot system operational at these facilities. So that's one area we're concentrating on. And I think it's just the other energy sources, further down the road. You mentioned hydrogen. That's definitely going to be in the mix, right? So there's some interesting projects going on large scale with hydrogen. How are we going to see that trickle down into the more, commercial and even manufacturing facilities? How do we leverage hydrogen moving forward? I think that's an area we're going to see more growth and more applications on in the next couple of years.
Now, there is a lot to unpack there with what you just said. I'll mention a couple of things. One, we see a lot of venture capital deals where these companies are dying to get pilots. And a big gap we've seen in the market is lack of insurability for some of these pilots when you go on these big facilities. And we recently had deep conversations with an insurer who's developed a new line of business where they can underwrite some of this stuff, which I think is a big opportunity and sort of a gap in the market. And then also on the hydrogen front, we're working closely with an OEM who can do 100% hydrogen fuel in a combustion turbine, which I think is going to be a big deal. You can probably imagine there's only, four or five big ones anyway. So we won't mention any OEMs for free, but that's how we don't have advertisers yet for everybody listening, but we do see big opportunities. Exactly what you said, new technologies, and boy, that pilot scale piece is just a hole in the market. So it's exciting to hear that you guys are working on it because we don't see a lot of EPCs that are out there willing to do the extra work necessary to get that out in the field.
Yeah, one more selfish plug on pilots. So me and Hunt actually owns our own fabrication shop. It's just down the road from my office here in Milwaukee. And that's been a pretty common request over the past couple months is, hey, can you help us design and build a pilot skid that we could maybe even put in a container and then start shipping around from project site to actually, demonstrate the potential of this new technology. Taking it from a bench scale model to a pilot scale model definitely is a pretty heavy lift on the design side. Fortunately, we have fabrication design team here that has done that successfully in the past before. So that's one way we're really growing our fabrication services is helping companies that have never done a pilot before get into the pilot market to be able to push their technology.
Boy, and there's so many of them, and everybody talks about it. You can have the greatest technology in the world, but hey, CO2 is a physical thing, and all this stuff has to be deployed in the real world. We can't do it in software like we did the last, call it 30 years of technology innovation. So this is a different animal. It has to be deployed physically. And boy, you guys are meeting a big need in the market. So much venture capital flowing into the space and being raised, but the next wave is going to be taking those ideas and making them reality in the real world.
Yep. Keep providing the money, Peter.
I'll do the best I can. Last year, 2023 was a tough year for venture, but it was a great year, I think, for projects and for exactly what you're saying, decarbonization, a lot of bigger companies leading the way, but we see the second half of 24 being a really good year for venture because there's just all this built up money looking for deals in the climate space.
Yeah, that's great to hear. One other thing just to comment on with some of the work we're doing on site. So when you're on site, one of the key concerns that, some people forget about is safety, right? So, we're working at energy plants or production facilities and, safety is a high priority. Safety is ingrained in our culture here at Mean Hunt and, safety does cost, right? You pay for safety, in the equipment, having monitoring equipment, having, safe spaces for the operators to work in, and developing safety plans for when our team is actually on site. And that is probably one thing that, we get asked about is like, well, how much is it going to cost to make this safe? I'm like, well, we'll let you know, right? So we're going to dig into it and get back to you. But that's one of those scale ups that sometimes gets forgotten, but we make sure to bring that back to the top of the list is make sure it's designed and executed in a safe manner. So everyone goes home at the end of every day and has a good time with their family.
No, that is huge. And I learned that well being in a venture backed startup about 10 years ago that built an industrial sort of containerized system for gas turbine plants. And man, the safety culture is big. And you can't just go walking onto those plants if you don't know what you're doing. So to all the venture backed companies out there, make sure you choose a partner like Mead and Hunt that knows what they're doing on these big facilities because it's not something you can learn overnight.
Yep.
So well, good stuff, Jeff. It's been great having you on. We really appreciate you taking the time to educate the audience. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you and reach out if they have projects that they'd like you guys to take a look at?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy to find me on LinkedIn. So just look at Mead and Hunt and Jeff VanVoorhis, and I'm usually posting something on there. So that's probably the easy way to find. Also, you can Google Mead and Hunt and get to the Energy and EPC group, and I'll be there. Or you can jot down my cell phone number, 414-719-1642. It's always on, and I'm always answering.
That's good stuff. And that's true service when you're willing to take a call, because a lot of people, they just send those calls to voicemail. So that's great. Jeff Van Boris, has been great having you on. Meet and Hunt, you guys check them out. To all the venture backed companies out there, you got a potential partner here for your pilot scales. We don't hear that a lot. And make sure you reach out to these guys. Thanks for being on, Jeff.
Thank you, Peter.